welcome. Happy Tuesday. My microphone always has to be adjusted. Dr. Jason Dean, BraveTV, your source for health, freedom, and knowledge. It is Survival Dispatch Day. What's up, buddy? How are you?
How you doing, Jason?
Living the dream.
One nightmare at a time.
Yeah, right after I texted you yesterday, we're tracking the calendar on when they're gonna like pull off this crap. And then do you know what the Schumann's resonance is?
I do not.
Okay, so there's it's kind of in the natural health world. It's not really natural health, it's physics, it's earthquake stuff, but there's the natural health world looks at it too, because basically it's universal energy that's coming in, and it's actually shown on a graph and almost like a thermal radar. Some people think it's crazy. All of us in the world, we watch it and it always plays out exactly how it is. And today it is full blown. Like the energies are off the charts, like ridiculous. And it's not necessarily good energy. It's like, it's intense energies, right? So when I was messaging yesterday, I was like, you can feel it coming in and something's about to pop off. So we're yesterday, as I'm texting you and talking to other people, we're like predicting what's going to happen. But we're like, what time do you think this is all going to go down? And then all of a sudden last night, right as you're trying to go to bed, X blows up with, school protests and and it's right on time. I mean, you can't make this shit up.
Right. Yeah. You're referring to the Columbia University shenanigans.
Correct. It's insane. And then the best part is, luckily Americans are kind of waking up, because I see posts this morning and some of the people are like, those are really nice tents. Who paid for the tents?
All of which are virtually identical. Different colors, same tent.
It's almost like, remember a couple of years ago when random pallets of bricks were showing up in the streets?
I would bet in both instances that it's George and Alex Soros behind it. I put money on it.
Open society?
Yep. That's where my money says it came from.
I feel like everything's going to be good. I mean, we're going to go through some pain. So I laugh at the entertainment now. And I know that sounds terrible, but it is shocking to me how many people out there, Chris, have no concept of what's going on.
I mean, they've been successfully, they've had their brains successfully turned to mush by the powers that be.
No concept at all.
But this goes back to decades of teaching kids to memorize and regurgitate instead of critical thinking skills. And it's pervasive in every level of education. Doesn't matter if it's post-secondary all the way down to elementary school, everything in between. So, I mean, these people can memorize and regurgitate bullshit facts with regards to things like, climate change, which doesn't exist. I heard somebody recently say, when somebody says to you, this is the warmest year or the warmest period on record, that your immediate response should be, since when? Because what they like to do is they like to go back to the 1500s and 1600s when there was historically like a long period of cooler weather. But you don't have to go much further back from there to find temperatures that are way higher than current temperatures. So, these are the warmest temperatures, in forever. Well, when it defined forever, how long has this been, sort of thing. And that undermines their argument.
Did you ever watch the video between Thomas Massey and John Kerry in Congress?
Probably. I like him, but I can't remember the exact specifics. But
Massey's one of the hopefully more decent ones in Congress, but he also has some climate science behind him. He's a pretty smart guy, and he just baked John Kerry. Like he's like, show me your science, like show me the actual, and then John Kerry would throw out his facts and figures, whatever were made up basically, and then Massey would literally just rebut it with actual documentation. So last night, Nicolette texts me and she says, "Do you remember when Chris said that schools could be problematic?" It's like, yeah. She goes, it could be public schools, but we also didn't talk about necessarily universities, which, if you want a CCP connection there, our universities, especially these like Harvards of the world, where these
Mhm.
idiots are, it's bad. Like worse than I mean, the amount of Chinese, and not like Chinese Americans, but like actual like infiltration of Chinese. It's insane, man. The numbers I was getting last night, I think I was seeing like 9-1 for like per like American. Um, these places are ripe for not just protests, but melting down internally. I mean, I start concerning myself with how many Americans have their kids in one of these schools and don't know that something could go down any minute.
Quite a few. I, I'd say quite a few. There's some crazy numbers out there, and it's hard to, validate many of them. But if you just look at October through January, there was north of 30,000 Chinese nationals intercepted at the border, and they're in the country now. And as you know, you don't, if you're Chinese and you live in China, you don't all of a sudden say, well, I'm going to leave the country and go somewhere else. You
Right.
you have to be approved to
Right.
travel abroad, all those sort of things. So we have some intel that's been telling us that there's somewhere around 30,000 special ops trained Chinese soldiers in the country who have positioned themselves close to critical infrastructure, substations, switching stations, as far as data networks are concerned, all these sort of things, right? But now we're hearing a completely different story. Now we're hearing hundreds of thousands of Chinese special ops trained people in the country. And so these are not special forces guys. Like these aren't guys who are going to come at you, running and gunning sort of thing. These are the guys who are, if they can't do a logical attack over the network, they'll do a physical attack in person to take down big portions of our infrastructure. The lights are getting turned off this year. Mark my words.
Oh
Minimum of
yeah.
2 weeks. You heard it here first. It'll be a minimum of 2 weeks of grid down.
Yep.
These are my predictions based on the intel that we have access to,
I'm in
both
I'm
open
in full
source and
agreement with
closed
you
source.
based on what I've read.
Yeah, the lights are going off. They're going off for a minimum of 2 weeks, and there will be a minimum of 50 people. 50 million people perish during that 2 weeks.
So we were talking behind the scenes last week. I think it was last week. Nicolette and I, we were doing our After Dark thing on Wednesday nights, which is like a membership thing, so not everybody's in it.
Okay.
And Nicolette is she's a being of light. So she always likes to think very positive, very, very much like my wife, right? And so I'm
Okay.
like the opposite of her. Like I look at I look at the reality stuff. I'm like, you're wrong, you're wrong. No. And I don't I think we were just it was her and I, but maybe somebody else, whatever. And she's like, we came to the conclusion that we are gonna lose 2/3 of our population at some point. So when you say 50 million, I don't disagree with that at all.
So I'm talking 50 million in 2 weeks with the lights turned off. That's
That's
that's not
that's
a that's not a
I
long
don't.
term
You have
prediction.
better info on that. But that's crazy.
That's a short term prediction. Okay,
Okay.
so uh, you're going to have massive food shortages even over the course of a couple weeks. You're going to have anarchy and chaos, people killing each other. You're going to have people think that they've got carte blanche approval to do whatever they want, not realizing that there will always be a reckoning, whether it's a reckoning in this lifetime or afterwards. So my numbers might be conservative, but based on everything that we know, that we've been told, what we know is here, as far as terrorist cells are concerned, as far as these Chinese special ops, we're up to 181 countries, by the way, that have invaded our country. 181. Not too long ago it was 160. That 181, by the way, is directly from Tom Homan, Trump's
Yep.
former director of ICE. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Let me give you some other numbers. So, Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers is a friend of mine, Green Beret for 39 years. Came in under Reagan, retired under Brandon a few years ago. He's leading a think tank in Dripping Springs, Texas,
Yep.
and they spend a tremendous amount of time as a cavalry patrolling the Texas-Mexico border. So what they do is they gather intel and then they stay there in many cases, hand it over to the DPS till the DPS shows up, and then they do something about it. It's like this giant game of whack-a-mole, right? You ready for this? In the past 3 years, they have documented over 10,000 cartel drone incursions into Texas, with the drones flying below the radar deck, which is 500 feet typically, and dumping massive amounts of fentanyl, then they pass the coordinates off to mules on this side. So the mules aren't bringing stuff across the border or under tunnels and all that stuff to the same extent that they were before. They literally just fly the drones across
Yep.
and drop them. And you've heard me mention this before. There is no good solution as of yet to defend against drone incursions, whether it be warfare or terrorism. So, believe it or not, and I got to give this guy props. There's a guy named Carl Caudle, Caudle. He was law enforcement for decades. The guy's got multiple degrees. Everybody in his family is essentially a rocket scientist, including himself. Like these people, you know what it's like when you get around people like that. It doesn't take very long to realize that these are just off the chart intelligent people.
Yep.
So, do you remember me mentioning how the DoD put an RFP out looking for EMP weapons that they could mount on our drones to take
Yep.
out the circuitry from other drones? Well, Carl's oldest daughter is a nuclear physicist, and she put together this whole thing on how it won't work. And there's devices that can be placed on the enemy drones that weigh next to nothing that will completely protect them from those EMP pulses. And I don't want to get into the specifics of it because that's something I don't want to give away to the bad guys. We will at some point when we have the right answer. But are you ready for this? You know, when you're talking to somebody who's got like a 180 plus IQ and they come at something from such a simplistic viewpoint that you think to yourself, why didn't I think of that?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the average lifespan is for a pigeon that is looked after? Like they have, trainers, handlers, people feeding them, those sort of things. 20 to 30 years.
I was gonna say
Okay.
10, but I have no idea, no education in pigeons, so I was thinking low.
So pigeons in an urban environment rarely live beyond 2 years.
20 to 30
Pigeon
years in a protected environment.
and or the wild. So if you go to the most rural locations, it's not
Okay.
unusual for pigeons to live to be
Non-city.
20, 30 years old. Yes. But when they are raised and tended in captivity, they live the same 20 to 30 years. Okay. Kind of a, I don't know, macabre scenario that Carl laid out. But he said, you know how easy it would be to train pigeons to fly into the blades of drones? He said, they would do it all day long. And even the larger drones, the the rotors are typically lightweight materials like carbon fiber, those sort of things. They're very easily damaged. Okay. How
Taken
many
out of the
times,
air.
think back over time, how many times have you heard of a jetliner ingesting birds into the front of an
Takes the
engine?
damn plane down.
Yeah. Worst case scenario takes plane down. Best case scenario, they lose that
They lose
particular
that
engine.
engine, yeah.
So he's really on to something here. He's applied a lot of thought to it that we may need to go low tech instead of high tech. It's not always about having the most advanced, technical abilities. He essentially said, you look at what they've done with pigeons for, hundreds of years for messenger, to be messengers. He said, would not be hard to train them into being kamikazes. And so if you were to strategically place, call it farms, zoos, whatever you want, of trained pigeons, it'd just be a matter of letting them go and they would do their thing. I think I mentioned these guys too. This is a bit of a play on.
That's obviously some people would be PETA would be all over that because they're idiots. But you know what?
It would be.
If we can bred, I have no problem with this because for greater good for humanity is you just start getting pigeons knocked out left and right, like get these things bred and handled, and then you teach them the loss of their life is well worth handling drones that can be easily taken down.
So look at the technology on the drone side for starters, okay? So if you block radio frequencies, the vast majority of them just go home. As soon as they lose
Right.
that tether to the mothership, they
Yep.
skedaddle home, okay? But we do have an increasing prevalence of AI powered drones, which we've discussed. And we have these drones now. The Israelis have these drones where they're using them AI powered drones with no radio frequencies because they're underground in tunnels, mapping tunnels in Gaza, killing Hamas terrorists. But we're talking Skynet level stuff from Terminator, essentially,
Right.
where one of them popped up from underground. A few weekends ago, we discussed this, and it killed a car full of UN observers. So they're 100% autonomous, right? So think of it this way: you have these enemy drones over something like an open air venue, concert, football game, whatever the case may be, and you attempt to take them down. That just like the ones that you see in Russia, Ukraine, they'll be kamikazes and they will deliver their
Right.
payload. So if you shoot something at them and they figure out that you're shooting something at them, they will immediately take offensive measures to dump their payload. So
Hmm.
if we come all the way back to Carl's premise that maybe we need to go low tech with something like pigeons, and you're hearing this first, by the way, this is the first time I've mentioned this in any type of public venue. Uh, we stand a chance against these things. But speaking of Skynet, if you let me turn this around, look at the price of these shotgun
Is
shells.
that the shells you showed last week? What is it? 80,
Yeah,
$60?
for five plus
Five.
shipping was over $80, right? Somebody did a test last week and posted it to X, and they failed miserably. So as you can see, the slug is cut into five pieces, and there's a net inside of her. Our plan was we're going to put a drone at 100 feet elevation and shoot one of these at it, anticipating that it would come nowhere near it, and then drop to 80, 60, 40, 20 feet to see what happens. But watching this other guy's video, it was a complete failure.
Was it?
So, yeah,
It
yeah.
didn't go well.
No, so I mean, what they're using, troops in Ukraine are using are essentially goose guns, which is a shotgun with a 36-inch barrel. And Carl told me all the numbers behind it. I can't remember now, but it's something like, every X amount of yards traveled, the the concentration of buckshot grows by an inch for
Right,
every
right,
X
right.
amount of yards. So it hasn't been terribly successful. Probably the only place it's been successful. Have you seen the videos of the drones chasing people around tanks and
Oh
carriers
yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff?
I saw the one that was kind of creepy.
Well, yeah, and I mean they get right next to the person, they
And you
detonate,
just
and they
you
kill the
just
person,
blow them
right?
up.
I can see a goose gun being applicable in that type of scenario, but we're back to people going to condition black, man. Are they going to have the presence of mind to aim a shotgun with a 36-inch barrel basically on target to take this thing down? At the end of the day, we do not have good solutions for drones. It's the biggest concern. It doesn't matter if this cartels bring crap across the border. Doesn't matter if it's terrorist cells here in the homeland. Doesn't matter if it's state sponsored warfare on both sides. We do not have a good answer to the drone problem. I mean, the one thing that everybody should take from this is if you find yourself anywhere in public and you see drones coming in, run. Like, get
Get the
out
hell
of
out.
Dodge as fast as you possibly can and seek cover. And you have to seek cover somewhere where the drones can't get, because I've seen footage now out of Ukraine, Russia, where somebody spotted the drone does a beeline for them, and they try to hide under a bridge or they try to walk into the entranceway to a building. The drone just follows them and takes them out. Like, you have to have legit serious cover to avoid them. And here's the thing is, all these kids with video games, I don't know if you caught this or not, I think it's called DRL, Drone Racing League. It's a
I've
big
heard of it.
deal.
I've never seen. I've heard of it.
Oh my god.
Dude,
You
they're
should
impressive.
you should see the moves that these kids are, pulling off with these drones. Like, it'll make your head spin. And now our Air Force is recruiting these kids from these drone racing leagues.
Are they really?
And
It's not surprising. I've seen some of the videos of not that league, but I've seen, dude, they drive that better than I drive my car.
it's insane. It's absolutely insane. But my point is this: is that the offensive capabilities are there. We have it, but the bad guys have it as well. Defensively speaking, we don't have a good answer. And, potentially in the future, you'll look at technology like energy directed weapons. Okay.
Yep.
So things that are essentially lasers, but the batteries that are required to build up a significant amount of charge are uh, they're so large that you're not going to have these in any type of portable form factor for many years to come, right? Who knows? Like maybe rail guns of the Russians claim to have a rail gun that travels 8,000 kilometers in 1 second, which is enough to make your head spin. The good news is that when the Russians announce something like that, it typically means that out of 1,000 tests, they had one success, but they have nothing else to back it up with. Their engineering's not at the same level that ours is. And there's some chinks in the armor happening between the Russian and Chinese alliance. There are all kinds of evidence online of Russian companies complaining and or suing Chinese companies for sending milling and machining equipment that is just subpar and it produces garbage. So I'm not saying that they're not a significant force, but at the end of the day, when it comes back to it, it's really cheap and easy to get into drones, and it's really easy to go on the offense, and there is no good defense. There's just no good defense. Get this into you. The back of the Russian tanks behind the turret is kind of like their Achilles heel. Think of it as like
Yep.
the chute in the Death Star, right? And so they're now trying to put like fishnets, essentially fishnet bubbles around the back of that to stop the drones from getting close enough to take them out. I mean, I can't warn people enough that if you're in a public venue and you see drones coming, get out of Dodge. It's like last fall, right? The Cleveland Browns football game. Somebody flew a large DJI commercial drone. Like these are $20,000-$30,000
Yeah.
drones into the Cleveland Browns stadium, and everybody just stood there and stared at it. It was 2 weeks after 10/7. If it had been a paraglider, everybody would have been, holy crap, we're under attack, run for your life. But they stood there and looked at it. Nobody's ever been caught for that. That was an exploratory mission just to see how people would react. And until it actually makes headline news because a bunch of people get killed, people will just stand there, condition black, looking at it, thinking, "Oh, gee, I wonder what that thing's doing." So,
WWE used one at the Royal Rumble to film. I was sitting near the ring and I heard the noise. No one else paid any attention to it. I just happened to know the noise because I had my own. I looked up and it was probably, I don't know, 50 feet above us, something like that. Probably less than that. But they're playing with production and seeing what they can film, how it's going to look, etc. And like you said, I think sports teams are going to start doing this. But again, they're not of the mindset that it could be problematic. They're going to take it of the mindset, oh, this is planned this way, so that if something did happen that was in a very dark way, they're not ready for it.
I hate to do this. I got a freeze dryer being delivered, and I got to go sign for it.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Hey, have a good one, man. Appreciate you as
Likewise.
always. Survivaldispatch.com. Go get your freeze dryer, brother.
My apologies.
No worries. Be good. Take care, buddy.
All right. Thanks,
Bye.
Doc.